Peace and blessings, and welcome to Search Out the Matter. I'm Jay. Thanks for joining me as I seek the truth of Yah's Word. In this series, I want to dive into the different covenants that God made to see what we can learn from them. So we're going to start with Noah. And we're beginning in Genesis 8 after the ark had rested from the flood and Noah is now getting off of the ark. Verse 20. And Noah built an altar unto Yahuwah and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And Yahuwah smelled a sweet savor and said in his heart, I will not again curse the ground any more for man's sake. For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I again smite any more every living thing as I have done. While the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful, and multiply and replenish the earth. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, upon all that moveth on the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you. Even as the green herb have I given you all things. But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, ye shall not eat. And surely your blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of man. At the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed. For in the image of God made he man. In you be you fruitful and multiply. Bring forth abundantly in the earth, and multiply therein. And God spake unto Noah and to his sons with him, saying, And I, behold, I establish my covenant with you, and with your seed after you, and with every living creature that is with you, of the fowl of the cattle, and of every beast of the earth with you, from all that go out of the ark to every beast of the earth. And I will establish my covenant with you. Neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood. Neither shall there any more be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, This is the token of the covenant which I make between you and every living creature that is with you, for perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. So the first thing that we see after Noah gets off the ark is him build an altar to make sacrifices to Yahuwah. And as a result of this sacrifice, God is appeased and promises not to flood the earth anymore. He promises this in his heart. So now let's look at the components of the covenant that God has made with Noah. So the covenant itself is in verse 11. So he promises not to cut off all flesh or destroy the earth by the waters of a flood. Now the covenantees, or the people who are the recipients of this covenant, is all man and all beast. So all flesh is the recipient, the covenantees of this. The sign of the covenant is the rainbow. And the conditions are that man cannot eat flesh with the blood and not to shed man's blood. So this is pretty simple and concise. Not very much to it, but it's still a show of God's grace. So now let's move on to Abraham. And we're going to begin in chapter 12. And this is when God first called Abraham. So I wanted to go through some of the promises that God made to Abraham before he gave him an official covenant. 1. Now Yahuwah has said unto Abraham, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will shew thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. and in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. So Abram departed, as Yahuwah had spoken unto him. So here we see promises to make him a great nation, to bless him, to make him a blessing, and to bless those who bless him and curse those who curse him. And we see Abraham do as Yah has commanded. So let's go to 15. Verse 1. After these things, the word of Yahuwah came unto Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I am thy shield and thy exceeding great reward. Verse 5. And he brought him forth abroad and said, Look now toward heaven, and tell the stars, if thou be able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. And he believed in Yahuwah, and he counted it to him for righteousness. So here, if we go up to verses 2, we'll see that Abram didn't have any children, but God is still making him this promise to make him a great nation and innumerable descendants. So 18. In the same day, Yahuwah made a covenant with Abram, saying, Unto thy seed have I given this land, from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. So now we have an actual covenant, and it's a covenant for land, this land being the land of Canaan. So let's move over to 17, beginning verse 4. As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham. For a father of many nations have I made thee. And I will make thee exceeding fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee. And I will establish my covenant between me and thee and thy seed after thee in their generations for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto thee, and to thy seed after thee. And I will give unto thee, and to thy seed after thee, the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. And God said unto Abraham, Thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore, thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. This is my covenant, which ye shall keep, between me and you and thy seed after thee. Every man child among you shall be circumcised, and ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be a token of the covenant between me and you. And he that is 8 days old shall be circumcised among you, every man child in your generations, he that is born in the house or bought with money of any stranger, which is not of thy seed. He that is born in the house, and he that is bought with thy money, must needs be circumcised. And my covenant shall be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised man-child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant. So let's look at the components now of this covenant. So the covenant is here starting in verse 4. It is to make Abraham a father of many nations. He's going to make him exceeding fruitful. Kings are going to come out of him. And this covenant is an everlasting covenant between him and his seed after him. And he's going to give them the land of Canaan. So that is the covenant. Now, what is the sign of the covenant? Every man child among you shall be circumcised. So this is the sign of the covenant. Where with Noah, the sign was the rainbow, which Noah has no part in. Now it's circumcision. So Abraham has to make sure that he and all his descendants are circumcised. What are the conditions of the covenant? The conditions are circumcision, right? And verse 14, and the uncircumcised man-child whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. So we have the condition of circumcision, but Abraham is still a descendant also of Noah. So we can't forget that the conditions not to eat flesh with blood and not to shed man's blood. So Abraham's covenant has more conditions and is more restrictive, but it comes with better promises. Because all that the rest of Noah's descendants can count on is God not destroying the earth by a flood. Here with Abraham, he's got a promise to be made a great nation and the kings coming out of him and innumerable descendants. So this is a better covenant, but with more conditions now. So I want to look down at 15. And God said unto Abraham, As for Sarai thy wife, thou shalt not call her name Sarai, but Sarah her name. And I will bless her, and give thee a son also of her. Yea, I will bless her, and she shall be a mother of nations. Kings of people shall be of her. Then Abraham fell upon his face, and laughed, and said in his heart, Shall a child be born unto him that is 100 years old? And shall Sarah that is 90 years old bear? And Abraham said unto God, Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee. And God said, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and will make him fruitful, and will multiply him exceedingly. 12 princes shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But my covenant will I establish with Isaac, which Sarah shall bear unto thee at this set time in the next year. So here we're seeing that God is clarifying, because Abraham has another son, that the son that he already has is not the son that this covenant is going to apply to. It's going to be to another son that he will have in the future. And Abraham, looking at his old age and Sarah's old age, pleads to substitute in his son that's already born, but God says no. So now let's go to Genesis 22. And this is when the promised son Isaac has been born. 1. And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham, or test Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham. And he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for an burnt offering upon of the mountains which I will tell thee. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and saddled his ass, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up and went unto the place which God had told him. So verse 9. And they came to the place which God had told him of, and Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of Yahuwah called unto him out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, seeing that thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram, and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. 15. And the angel of Yahuwah called unto Abraham out of heaven the second time, and said, By myself have I sworn, saith Yahuwah, for because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thine only, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thee. Thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore. And thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. So the first thing I want to deal with in this chapter is God referring to Isaac as Abraham's only son. So we're going to start back in Genesis 1. And verse 11. And God said, Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. 20. And God said, let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowls that may fly above the earth in the open firmament of heaven. And God created great whales and every living creature that moves, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind. And God saw that it was good. 24. And God said, let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping thing, and beast of the earth after his kind. And it was so. And God made the beast of the earth after his kind, and cattle after their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the earth after his kind. And God saw that it was good. So we see this repetitiveness of everything reproducing after their kind. So let's go to Genesis 3. After the fruit was eaten. 15. And I will put enmity between thee and the woman, and between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. So now we're looking for this seed of this woman after her kind. So let's go to 4. 1. And Adam knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from Yahuwah. And she again bare his brother Abel. Okay, now let's look at these names. Cain, Cain, and proper name of a people, location, proper name. Same as Cain, meaning a spear, and Kana, meaning to get or acquire. So this is what we're looking for. It's from Kana, meaning acquire, because we see that Eve said, I have acquired a man from Yahuwah. She then goes on to name his brother Abel. Just look at Abel. Abel, the second son of Adam. It's from the same as Habel, vapor or breath. And you can see it says vanities. If you've ever read Ecclesiastes, where Solomon is talking about vanity of vanities, this is the word that's being used. So Cain, in Eve's eyes, was the man she had acquired from Yahuwah. And Abel was just vanity of vanities. He's just something else that came out after Cain came out. So let's go to verse 25. After Cain kills Abel, and Adam knew his wife again, and she bare a son, and called his name Seth. For God, she said, hath appointed me another seed instead of Abel, whom Cain slew. So now, after Cain kills Abel, Eve realizes that Abel was the seed that she was looking for. The one that she disregarded, that was the actual seed that she was looking for. Because it can't be Cain, because he didn't do what was right. Let's go to 5. Verse 1. This is the book of the generations of Adam. In the day that God created man, in the likeness of God made he him. Male and female created he them, and blessed them, and called their name Adam in the day when they were created. And Adam lived 130 years, and begat a son in his own likeness, after his image, and called his name Seth. And the next is Seth. Now we know that Adam still has another son named Cain, but Cain is not mentioned here. So we see Adam, Seth, Enos, Canaan, Mahalalel, Jared, Enoch, Methuselah, Lamech, and Noah. So this is a specific bloodline, a specific genealogy here. But this is not the genealogy of Adam. It says, in the day that God created man in his likeness, And Adam was in his likeness. And that likeness passed on to Seth and then to Enos until we get to Noah. So God is saying, this is the one that my likeness will be preserved in. This is the genealogy of God kind. And what kind is that? Spirit. For God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth. So we get at the end of this genealogy to Noah. And we started this study in Genesis 8, where we see Noah had built an ark. So God tells Noah to build this ark in the absence of any rain ever having been on the earth. And then in Genesis 8, we see Noah getting off the ark. So we see that Noah was obedient. Let's go to Genesis 11. Verse 10, these are the generations of Shem. So it picks up another genealogy, starting with Shem, who was Noah's son. And we get down to 31. And Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran, his son's son, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth with them from Ur of the Chaldees to go into the land of Canaan. So, do you think it's coincidental that in the next chapter we see God telling Abram to leave and eventually giving him this same land that he and his father were already headed for in the previous chapter? I don't think so. So now, this only, when he's saying Isaac, the only son, it's not because he's disregarding Ishmael, because he had already promised to make Ishmael a great nation also. But he's saying this is the one in which my seed will be called. This is after my likeness. So from here, I want to go back to Genesis 15, 6. And he believed in Yahuwah, and he accounted it to him for righteousness. So in 15, this is where we see the promise of a child and being multiplied and innumerable descendants being made. But he's childless, as we see in verse 2. So by the time we get to 16, now Sarai, Abram's wife, bare him no children. And she had an handmaid, an Egyptian, whose name was Hagar. And Sarah said unto Abram, behold now, Yahuwah has restrained me from bearing. I pray thee, go unto my handmaid. It may be that I may obtain children by her. So Abraham did this, and that's where we get Ishmael from. Now in 17, we see God coming back and reconfirming this promise. But when Abraham realizes that the promise is for another son and not the one that he already has, he laughs in his heart because of his and Sarah's old age and pleads for God to take Ishmael instead. Okay, just do it with Ishmael. But God said, no, I'm going to give you a son by this time next year. And that's going to be the seed of promise. So this Abraham believing God is not about Abraham saying, oh, God, God's going to do it. It's Abraham had doubts, as we all had doubts. But what we see in Genesis 12 is when God told Abraham to get up and move, Abraham got up and moved. And in Genesis 22, when God told Abraham to go sacrifice his son, it said Abraham got up early in the morning to do it. So he wasn't delayed. Abraham had immediate obedience to what it was that God said. And if we go back to verse, is it 18? Yes, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. So this was the story of obedience. So with that, thank you again for joining me. Feel free to drop any comments, concerns, agreements, or disagreements in the comment section below. I hope that this study has blessed you and inspired you to search further into Yah's word. May Yahuwah bless you and keep you. May Yahuwah shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. May Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace.